She collapsed on my doorstep in the teeth of a nor'easter barefoot, shaking, whispering a hymn my dead fiancé used to sing. I hadn't held another human being in 30 years, not once. Tell me this, if that knock hit your door at midnight in that kind of storm, what would you have done? People online call me the recluse, the virgin billionaire. The guy in the glass castle on the Maine cliffs. Say it however you want. From the inside it felt quieter, coffee for one, curtains pulled even when the ocean went bright blue letters I never mailed, because the person I'd write to was gone. I made my life into a museum, polished floors, neat labels, a sign in my head that said, "Please do not touch." That night, the wind came sideways off the Atlantic rain, slapping the panes, until the house hummed, and I was in my study with Lydia's letters spread out, not to read, just to run a finger over her handwriting, like a man checking a pulse that should be impossible. Then the knock, weak, then steady. Not the gate, not a branch, a person. I opened the door, and there she was, curled on the stone like a dropped bird sundress pasted to her knees, hair stuck to her cheeks, feet torn up by the gravel. 18, maybe. I didn't think about headlines, lawyers' optics. I just scooped her up, ribs like kindling under my hands, and carried her inside. Ruth, my housekeeper, came fast, with her raincoat half-buttoned, the kind of grumbling that means terror, not anger. "Lord have mercy," she said, palm to the girl's cheek, cold as a dock nail. We wrapped the kid in blankets, dragged the space heater close, brewed tea, even though she couldn't swallow yet. When she coughed back to the surface for a breath, she said one word so soft, I thought I imagined it. Hope. Then her eyes rolled and she slipped under again. Hope. I said it out loud because the room needed that sound. The storm shoved at the glass like it wanted in, and I sat a foot away and prayed like a man who forgot how. No church voice, no fancy language, just please, please. By morning she was warm and starving. We brought her into the dining room I never use, a 10-seat table that always felt like a cruel joke, and Ruth set down eggs, thick toast, bacon I pretend I don't eat. The girl tucked a strand of hair behind her ear collar, coming back to her face, voice careful. "I'm sorry to impose, I'll go as soon as I can." Then quieter, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to say it, "No one deserves to eat alone." That line slid under 30 years of ice and cracked something open. A sound I hadn't heard in forever began to move in that room. Chairs scraping silver on china company. Her name was Hope Lawson. Her car died 3 miles up the coastal road. She thought she could beat the weather, she couldn't. That could have been the whole story. A ride to town, a thank you, except for what happened in the music room. I was walking past with coffee when I heard a melody soft as thread through a needle, the same hymn that used to float out on Sunday mornings when Lydia sat at the piano and pretended not to notice me leaning in the doorway. Amazing Grace. I hadn't heard it inside these walls since the funeral. And there was Hope's sleeves pushed up, wiping dust off the keys with the edge of her borrowed sweater, humming like the sound itself might keep the house from going silent again. I leaned on the doorframe because my knees went weak. "Where'd you learn that?" I asked, and it came out rougher than I meant. She startled, backed away from the bench. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have touched anything. My mom used to sing it when I was little." The room felt crowded with ghosts. Lydia's laugh, her hand pressed to my chest on the last verse, the way light used to move on her hair at the window. And I couldn't line up any words that didn't feel like breaking, so I nodded and walked out before the old grief took me under in front of a stranger. "Listen. People think a scandal comes next, and sure we'll get there. But first came the thaw, the slow kind that turns to sudden the way Maine finally gives up winter." Hope asked if she could earn her keep while the mechanic waited on parts. I work hard, she said. I won't be a burden. She wasn't. She moved through the kitchen like she belonged to it, humming flipping pancakes, perfectly golden, laughing at herself when she dropped a spatula. Heat the copper first, she told Ruth, who pretended to be offended, and then took a second plate. She opened the heavy curtains I'd kept drawn since the day I shut everything down, sneezed at the dust, grinned at the rainbow prisms the chandelier threw on the walls. She found Lydia's garden journals in the library set cross-legged on the rug and traced lily sketches with a fingertip. Someone loved this into existence, she whispered. We walked the beach and she collected sea glass like talismans holding a deep blue piece up to the light. Wild how something broken gets tumbled and tumbled until it's soft and beautiful again. She said it like a question. I felt it like an answer. From my study window, she spotted the greenhouse through a net of vines, Lydia's sanctuary, a place I'd locked the week she died and never touched again. Is that a greenhouse? Hope asked. We could fix it. Could felt dangerous, but we tried. We cut back the thorny mess, replaced cracked panes, scrubbed the old potting table until the scars in the wood showed, and under every layer of grime I felt Lydia's hand at my back, not pushing, just steadying. When I paid Hope for the work, she opened the envelope and cried fast, laughter sneaking through like light. I'm sorry, she said, wiping her face. It's my first paycheck with my name on it. Not cash, feels legitimate. Feels like you, I told her, and found I meant it. Pattern interrupt. A delivery driver lifted his phone at the gate while we were hauling groceries, snapped a picture me catching Hope's elbow when she slipped on the ice, both of us laughing. 48 hours later, the headline hit like a brick. Virgin billionaire living with teen girl. Yeah, that happened. News vans lined the gravel like war wagons, reporters shouting through the bars. Mr. Warren, how long has she been here? Mr. Warren, what's the nature of your relationship? And my board called an emergency meeting, and lawyers said optics and exposure and reputational risk, like those words could move furniture back where it belonged. Do you think that's fair? How fast a rumor can erase the truth of a life? Hope lifted her chin. I won't hide, she said. We went to the grocery store anyway. In aisle 3, 2 women whispered gold digger like it was a diagnosis. Just like her mother, and said Laura was always after rich men. At least she had the decency to leave town, and the can slipped from Hope's fingers, hit the tile, and rolled. She walked out without looking back. I found her on the cliffs where the wind will take your breath if you let it. I'm nobody, she said into the roar. Just another Lawson girl causing trouble. Look at me, I told her, you're the person who brought music back into my house. You made Ruth smile again. You see beauty in broken glass and goodness in a bitter old man. I hadn't meant to say bitter out loud. We both heard it. We both knew it was true. I went home and wrote my resignation, stepped away from everything, public cut wires I never asked to be tied to in the first place. If the world wanted to misread kindness, fine. I wasn't going to let it miswrite her. Now the twist. The piece that flipped our story and almost ended it. 2 weeks later, another storm came in off the water, and Hope was in my study, doing what she does when she's anxious, putting the world in rows, trying to create a little order where there isn't any. The bottom drawer stuck. Inside an old envelope, I'd forgotten Corner's soft handwriting that rang through my bones. For Nathan, if you ever find her. Dated 18 years ago, written the spring after Hope was born. She opened it. If that makes you angry, I get it. She was angry at herself, too. When I walked in, she was standing by the desk with that letter crushed in her fist, and a look on her face I never wanted to see. You knew, she said, all this time you knew who I was. Hope. Was I just an obligation, she asked, voice cracking like river ice. Did you take me in because of this duty? And she lifted the page like a warrant. Truth. That letter had sat in that drawer for years, and I'd been a coward about it, afraid of the feeling I'd see on her face if she knew, afraid of the feeling I'd see in mine if she left. I said the worst line a man can say at a moment like that. Let me explain. She didn't want an explanation. She packed a bag and walked into the rain the way she arrived, a flash of soaked fabric footprints filling with water. I drove loops for hours, showed her picture at diners at 2 in the morning. Hope in the greenhouse with dirt on her cheek, eyes bright. Called shelters, hospitals, old contacts. Who owed me favors, prayed like a man who finally admits he can't hold the sky up by himself. Nothing. Then a nurse from Maine Medical called. We have a young woman who matches your report, she said, voice kind, steady. I ran those halls like a rookie's shoes, squeaking, heart-hammering. Room 412. She looked smaller than I remembered, skin almost as white as the sheet's IV dripping monitors, marking the rhythm that had become the most precious sound in the world. I took her hand and did the only honest thing left. I read the letter out loud. Dear Nathan, if you're reading this, my daughter must have found you. I have no right to ask you anything, not after running when Lydia died and leaving my child. My shame runs deeper than you know. The drugs, the lies. But my greatest sin was leaving her. If she ever comes to you, care for her not out of duty, but because I remember the man who loved my sister with clean hands, because you still have love left in you, because she will need someone to show her that not everyone leaves. Show her that some people stay. With regret and hope, Laura. I couldn't get through the last line without breaking. You weren't an obligation, I told Hope. You were grace knocking. Her eyelids fluttered, her fingers tightened on mine, and in a voice thin as thread she said, I heard the letter. I hummed the hymn because words felt clumsy in that room. She hummed with me, and there in that antiseptic light, I felt something old unclench, something harder than grief and older than fear. When I brought her home, Ruth had filled the entrance with flowers like a parade. Roses, lilies, mason jars of wildflowers the staff picked along the road. You're home, she said, both hands on Hope's cheeks. That's what matters. I had something else waiting. Blueprints rolled up on the coffee table, edges worn from being carried around like a secret. A home for runaway youth. I told her 20 beds, counseling rooms, a kitchen that never shuts, a library with good chairs. I want to call it the House of Hope, if that's okay with you. She laughed and cried at the same time. Let's build it together. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. The town that had whispered learned how to knock. The high school woodshop built our dining tables. The bakery that used to pass judgment sent bread twice a week. The hardware store gave us a discount that made the owner's accountant sigh and shake his head, and we planted white lilies in the courtyard for Lydia. Hope set up a study corner in the greenhouse and started online nursing courses, anatomy flashcards propped against pots of basil. Ruth quizzing her while soup simmered, and in the evenings we ate with our coats still on because construction dust goes everywhere, talking about permits and paint colors and the strange ways people heal. Reporters came back, same vans, different questions. What made you decide to do this? A young one asked, and I looked at Hope because the truth was in her face. Sometimes grace knocks in a storm. I said, you just have to be brave enough to open the door. You know what I mean? Almost a year to the night she collapsed on my step, another storm hammered the glass, and we were by the fire with hot chocolate, telling Ruth she should open a bakery, just so she could scold paying customers properly. When I said, half joking, it feels like someone's about to knock, and then we heard it, 3 quiet raps, like a hand that wasn't sure it was allowed. A boy stood there, 15, maybe, jacket, thin eyes huge. People who've been turned away a lot don't cross thresholds fast. I put my cardigan around his shoulders. "Come in," I said. Hope met his eyes with the steady kindness I've learned to trust. "You're safe now," she told him. Through every window, the house breathed, and the ocean went on throwing itself at the rocks like it always does. And in my chest, something like peace finally found a place to sit. Now here's the part that might make you angry, and I'm fine if it does, because we built the House of Hope for kids who need a landing place, but the world keeps making kids jump in the first place. People still ask if what I did was appropriate. Taking in a teenage girl when I live alone, when the optics could be spun 12 ugly ways. I hear the question under the question. When did kindness become suspect? When did a knock at midnight turn into a legal risk analysis? When did we decide that caring should be cross-examined while cruelty gets clicks? Do you think that's fair? If it were you and a kid knocked in a storm, would you open the door, or would you wait for the right paperwork while the wind did what it does? I lived 30 years like a closed door, if you want to call me names. For opening it fine, I learned rumors travel faster than truth, money can't armor you from grief, and families are sometimes built from spare parts. A nurse's hymn, a housekeeper's steadiness, a broken mother's apology on yellow paper, a boy brave enough to knock. The last time I walked the cliffs at sunrise, Hope brought me coffee black, with a whisper of sugar, because she knows I'll never admit I like it that way. Behind us, the House of Hope buzzed awake, sneakers on stairs, spoons in bowls, Ruth humming off-key, the greenhouse throwing morning light back at the sea. And for the first time, my fortress looked like what it should have always been, lived in. So let's talk. Are we the kind of people who believe the worst first, who see a headline and forget there are people under it, or the kind who open the door and deal with the mess together? If you disagree with me, tell me why. I want the argument, the pushback, the whole messy conversation, because that's how we get better at being human. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what knocked on your door and changed you. Tell me what you would have done different. Told the truth about the letter sooner, shut the gate on the press, called the cops that first night. I want to hear it. Share this with one person who needs to hear it tonight. The kid sleeping in a car, the neighbor who thinks they have nothing left to give, the friend who keeps their curtains closed. And if you want more stories like this, raw and imperfect and true to how life actually feels, hit subscribe, stick around, and tell me yours. Lights on, door open.